Hi all, on Play Chess and streaming to YouTube. So this week I thought we'd interrupt the Fischer Spassky match coverage. There's something very exciting going on at the moment. The Sinquefield Cup in St. Louis, United States. It's going to be over the next 2 weeks. I wanted to cover some of the key, interesting games from the tournament on my YouTube channel, and I thought, well, why don't I use tonight's slot to go interactively with you guys over an interesting game. And I think one of the more interesting games we could focus on to start off with, assuming my internet doesn't crumble later on, I think, I'm not sure you're aware of this, Levon Aronian in round 1 seemed to play an absolutely brilliant game against Fabiano Caruana. So did any of you hear about this game? I think this is the one we should start off with and take it from there. Okay, so Levon Aronian playing white against Caruana. He's 2765, Caruana's 2808. So these are the top players in the world. At the top of the FIDE are racing this basically. So let's see what happened. Also, is live but working here? Yes. D4 from Levon, and we have knight f6, c4, as though it's going to be an Imza engine now, e6, but this is just a way, it turns out, of just getting into the Queen's Gambit declined, because after knight f3, black plays the very solid d5. It's not Queen's engine territory, just kind of Queen's Gambit declined territory. Knight c3, bishop e7. And the most common move across the history of time is bishop g5, but bishop f4 is quite trendy recently. In fact, I believe Topalov had quite very interesting games with this. It is quite trendy, it seems, recently. Bishop f4, with an idea later sometimes of playing c5, not just c takes d. So black castled, we have e3. And often black plays c5 here, but we have knight bd7. Which does of course allow white to suppress black from playing c5. The thing is this double-edged, this c5 move, to play it here? Well, it is played here. Sometimes in certain positions you wouldn't want to play this because it kind of releases that central tension. And sometimes it's possible for black to later hit at the right time with an e5 thematically. But for the moment, with bishop f4 and the knight here, white's got the e5 square under firm control, so it's a little bit more justified to play this c5 move. It has a cramping effect on black's queen side, and sometimes one can get a very dangerous pawn here. In fact, I believe Anand beat Magnus Carlsen in this line in a World Championship game with getting a strong trump card in the form of that c-pawn at some point. So yes, this is a very interesting system for white. Now, often it seems c6 is the most popular move theoretically. There's 303 games here, or knight h5, 183, but the move played was knight e4. So moving a piece again, and Levon reacted here with just protecting the knight on c3 with rook c1. It seems also knight takes has been played before a few times in queen c2. But he played rook c1, that was his choice. And black took on c3. Rook takes c3. And this pawn chain was hit now with move b6. So it does give white the opportunity of seemingly getting quite a dangerous pawn now by playing the move c6. And I'm not sure that b4 is particularly effective. Let's put on a Kabitzer actually as well here, just to check a few things. Alright. Actually, the Indian's choice is taking the pawn, so let's That's fascinating as well. But b4, if the pawn is supported, a5 might be good for black. For example, taking now, this position might be okay for black. I think black sometimes has a plan of something like c6 and to try and get rid of the light square bishop later. So anyway, here after b6, c6 was played, and we have knight f6, a3. So interesting stuff. That stops bishop b4. Yeah, in this position here, black is now threatening bishop b4, pinning the rook, so that is parried here. We have the move a5, and strategically it would seem desirable for black to get rid of this c8 bishop, because it's kind of not doing too much at the moment. Bishop d3 was played, and now knight e4 hitting the rook. I don't think white really wants to take on e4 here. The rook actually moved to c2. If white takes on e4, this position might actually be okay for black, because black's always got bishop a6. The bishop's not actually totally dead here if that bishop's not on d3. So yeah, the rook just moved to c2, and black, it seems, was keen now to play for an e5, which is kind of a thematic break, you'd think. But technically this is an opportunity here in this particular position to play bishop a6, because white, if bishop a6 is not played, then queen e2, like in some variations of the French defense where black wants to get rid of his bad bishop, queen e2 actually would delay bishop a6 for quite some considerable time, so leaving the bishop kind of seemingly passive in the pawn chain. But this is on the assumption that black's not going to get in e5 and liberate the bishop like this on this diagonal. I think here in Livebook, the bishop a6 line is probably another game with Caruana with the black's side. There's a game in Livebook with bishop a6, which let's have a quick, I don't know if I can get into that game actually. No, probably not. I thought there might be a way to investigate that game. Openings book. Anyway, it might actually be a game of Caruana's. That's what I've heard. So he's kind of innovated on, I mean, he knows this position. He's played f6, and apparently f6 was played quite quickly. So it seems strange here to leave this bishop potentially passive and stopped from bishop a6, which is what you'd think black, strategically black wants to get rid of this bishop and also weaken the light squares a bit. But instead this f6, as though, is it going to be e5 or g5? You see, this is the other tempo gainer. Now g5 ordinarily you think is a crazy thing to use. What advantage would you get from something like g5? Sometimes it can help exert indirectly some central influence. So it's an interesting idea. Whatever's happening here, it seems very interesting with f6. We have now the bishop a6 resource suppressed simply with queen e2, suppressing with that battery, pardon me, with that battery bishop a6. Now the engine's going crazy here for g5. In fact, this looks a bit crazy here. In the game, bishop d6 was played. Yes, there are some forcing moves, but pawns don't go backwards. So generally, you'd have to think you're sort of, are you burning the bridges with a move like g5? What does it actually do? But let's have a look. It's actually, well, Fritz's choice is to go absolutely bonkers like this, with the threat of trapping potentially the bishop to win a piece. This is bonkers line. Absolutely mad. White could probably just sack and have a good position here, it would seem. King's exposed. At least a perpetual check. I think would be guaranteed. So that's an engine bonkers line, just going for this bishop to try and trap it. Because the point here is, if something like h3 or h4, then knight takes g3 might actually be good for black to lock down with g4, and then get in e5 and trying to repair things, and also now threaten things like e4, ed, and try and get onto the light squares to do something about all the light square weaknesses. So that's bonkers, yeah, chess. g5 immediately. Not sure, but bishop d6 is still with reserve for g5. So maybe this position had been analysed in detail by Fabiano Caruana with his engines. So yes, he's sort of allowed his own resource to be destroyed here, but maybe it's not about e5 necessarily, but g5, this idea of g5. Crazy stuff. And in fact, so what are White's choices here? Well, I think it would help probably resolve some problems of black if bishop takes. Black might be able to play things like queen e8 and maybe e5 later, supporting e5 like that. So actually we see White just keeping this bind on that e5 break, just playing castles, so he doesn't mind bishop takes f4 and the double pawns at all, because of course that's just another clamp. This didn't happen, bishop takes f4, but that would just be creating another clamp on the e5 square to do this. So I mean, White wouldn't mind this, and if ever f5, then we have a fantastic knight on e5 against the bishop. We'll take here and strategically winning position. Knight against bishop is fantastic, undislodgeable knight. So you know, that seems unpleasant if black does take on f4 here, but the idea is revealed now that in fact it is this crazy stuff, g5 just being delayed. So this also, like I think on the live official, excellent official coverage, I don't know how many of you have seen the official coverage of the Sinquefield Cup. It's like there was another g5 of the round, the same round. I think before this g5 there was on the other game with Topolov against Topolov playing black against Colson, had a fantastic g5. It seems g5 spice games up. They're like the spice of chess at the moment. They kind of wake you up when spectators are watching games. All of a sudden there's this crazy g5. What on earth is going on here? What is this about? Well, let's see here if the bishop did retreat to g3. It seems black, just on brief analysis here, might be able to play something like e5. Might not be so terrible. Takes, and then take here, hitting the queen, and then take here. It depends how fatal or not these light square weaknesses are, all these weaknesses generally, but here it seems black might be okay. If there was some pressure here, might be okay here. Tactical resources, knight h4. This is trying to exploit the vacuum tactically. It gets a bit hairy, but I think black survives this sort of stuff. Apparently, black can survive. White can get a perpetual check though, again, if he wanted. But no. Bishop g3 wasn't played. Another idea, if black doesn't want to commit to e5, is queen e8. And here, saying something like this, maybe this is possible. That seems a bit secure for black. That seems possible as well. So maybe queen e8 is viable. Okay, so White though played perhaps the stronger move technically, perhaps. We don't have strong enough computers, do we, to tell for sure. Bishop takes d6. or leaving them long enough. Okay, bishop takes d6 was played. Knight takes d6. So is there a vacuum of weaknesses or not? It looks as though, you know, you look at this game and think black's really above 1600. I mean, really, because I mean, doesn't it seem? I mean, let's be honest. Can we try and be honest? If you didn't know this is Caruana playing black, I mean, I want to ask you. You know, do you think this looks like GM chess from black? Just some yes or no's on the stream. I mean, seriously, do you? You know, his bishop is kind of locked down. E5, there's a clamp on it, and there seems to be a kind of disregard, like, for weaknesses, because we're sort of trained not to move too many pawns or create too many weaknesses. And it seems black does have some sort of vacuum issues, weakness vacuum issues. I mean, if we were being objective, it looks as though, what is all this about, all these pawn moves? It's crazy stuff, but this is the thing, you know, these things might be really justified by the exact position, you know, the nuances of the exact position here. Crazy. See, how does white actually exploit black's issues? We've got potentially this bad bishop, but is it going to be liberated? We've got potentially some weaknesses. How are they actually going to be exploited? And it seems also, if you look at the rooks are not connected either. White seems to have a very harmonious position, harmonious position. Anyway, so white here played the move rook e1. You might think this is a bit of a mysterious rook move. What's the idea? Is white going to be playing e4 or something? Is it to prepare e4? Let's have a look at e4 immediately. What does e4 immediately do? If we're like building the china shop here, why can't we just play e4? Let's have a look. Takes. That might be able to take, and then play queen d5. So here it seems black might actually be in reasonable shape, and the bishop can always come out potentially on the diagonal layer. So by playing rook e1, this looks more preparatory, as though e4 might be on the cards, or is there something else to this move? e4 does have much more energy to it, and presumably that resource that we've just seen is not playable. If we give black any bad move, for example, let's just give black a token move, and we got to play e4 here. I think this might be with much greater effect, because any queen e5 we could just like take and then get to the 7th rank or something, or control the file. Yeah, so there's more effect. So e4, it's as though e4's on the cards when you play a move like rook e1. Because what is black doing anyway to guard against this? Remember, he can't ever play f5. He's going to weaken fatally. Like e5, it looks like pretty fails to weaken at e5. You don't really want to play that. So black locks down the queen side here with a4. And it also not just locks down these pawns, it also means now the resource rook a5 has been introduced, which could be handy at some point. Now again, playing e4, it might not be that hot in this position to play e4 immediately. It seems like to be a natural sort of move to try and open up the position, because sometimes you do want to open up the position to exploit a vacuum of weaknesses. But e4 here, let's have a quick look. E4 here, this is possibly okay for white here, this position. Any rook e7 might not be as scary as you think, say, because bishop f5 gains a tempo and rook f7 defends c7, so that might not be as scary as you think. So anyway, e4 put on hold again, if that is an idea. We see knight d2, but this introduces not just reinforcement for e4, it introduces the possibility of playing aggressively with the queen either here or here, and it also liberates the f pawn, maybe to try and break up these pawns or isolate more these pawns with f4. So there's 3 key possibilities that are kind of introduced with this retreat, and even more subtle might be this one, to reroute the knight to put some pressure on a4. So there's a few other possibilities. It's not all about e4. f4 might actually be the most dangerous positional threat here, or maybe even h4, just trying to weaken the king side. So black, after knight d2, finally does do something about his bishop, and yeah, the pressure has been taken off that e5 square. So black seizes upon this. He plays e5 here, and if black's given another move, then e4 is fantastic for black. Surely that would be a big problem. You know, bishop b5, rook here is like winning a piece, isn't it? Let's just check that. h3, e4. If bishop b5, rook a5 just wins a piece. So yeah, black's actually threatening now e4, it seems. So white stops that. He's got a few ways, it seems, to stop it. He can get out of the way with a move like queen h5. He can play f3, but he actually just plays e4 himself, and now things get really, really tense. The central tension is maximized now, and this is quite fascinating when this sort of thing happens. Black maximizes that central tension now by not taking on e4. I think this would favor white. If we have a look, taking, that resolves the central tension as well. This is a dangerous position for black, because there's things like taking on rook d1, you know, trying to expose the queen to d-file. No, black puts even more tension in the center of the board with f5. Incredible, the amount of central pawn tension. Now all these pawns staring at each other. So what on earth is going on here after f5? Let's have a quick look at a few things. If d takes e5, black might be able to get a reasonable position with f takes. After e takes here, queen takes, and black might be in reasonable shape. His bishop's now got a nice square on f5 coming up as well. This sort of position might be okay for black. So white's got to be very careful here after f5. So a great complexity to the position, great pawn tension. If e takes, then e4, and this position looks as though, although white's like won a pawn here, it seems black again can enjoy a nice position here. What does white actually do about d4 in this position? If you play something like queen e3, then f4 seems a bit scary. Black's gaining space quite dangerously, and white's king looks to be in some sort of potential danger here as well. So there doesn't seem to be a great way of easily resolving this tension at the moment by taking a pawn. So we've looked at d takes e5, e takes d5, and e takes f5. This is actually just miles better for black after e4, because again we're in those possibilities. White has to sack a piece. If here, I think rook a5 is still strong. Oops, rook a5 in this position. So yeah, so there's no, it seems that after f5 there's no easy way to punish black by taking any of these pawns. So fantastic position with central pawn tension. White instead just reinforces the pawns with the move f3. So the tension is kept one move longer now. f3, just reinforcing all that tension. So giving black all the options of taking pawns. And black does actually take a pawn here. Possible is rook e8. Rook e8 might keep the tension going. Okay, so but yeah, the tension's actually resolved here. We have d takes e4. F takes e4. And white is threatening now d takes e5. So what does black want to do about this d takes e5? Very resourceful move is played against this. If knight f7, I'm not sure this helps. E takes f5 just loses a pawn there and weakens the king. Although black can get this position, it seems like the king's quite weak here, and knight e4 looks pretty strong. No, black resourcefully holds against white's imminent d takes e5 by playing rook a5, the rook holding e5 here, holding white at bay. It seems we have though now e takes f5, which invites, it seems, black to have a great position, because surely by playing e takes f5 now, that after knight takes, black is gaining an important tempo, surely, with knight takes d4 as a threat to fork the queen and rook. And additionally, you know, if white's ever going to be playing bishop takes, it seems then black's light square issues are all automatically solved for the most part with tempo gain on the rook. So what is the method behind this madness? E takes f5, a surprising move, because knight takes f5, isn't this deliciously gaining a tempo? And d4 seems very weak, and in fact queen takes d4 is also on the cards here. Well, we see the pawn saved with first check to the king, and a remarkable move. I don't know how many of you have seen this game already on stream, but can you guess white's play? I hope some of you are still awake. So white's play, can you guess what white played? I'll give you 20 seconds starting from now. In case you're late to the stream or something, or this is Levon Aronian playing white against Fabiano Caruana. So these guys are like in the top in the world on the rating list. Any ideas if you haven't seen this game before? Especially this is pretty interesting. So Aronian against Caruana. Okay. Alright. Any ideas? Okay. You mentioned a few moves. Well, okay, let's have a look at, first of all, d takes e5. After knight d4, that fork seems pretty useful to black, and I wouldn't have thought there's much stuff in queen h5 just taking the rook. And where's the attack? There's no attack compensation, and if you want to miserably lose the exchange, this doesn't look too hot. It's like check, and actually rook f2 is crushing, right? So anyway, but there is a remarkable move played, which is the move d5. So it's closing up at least the queen from coming to d4. Yeah, it's shielding d4 from the queen, but it's inviting this winning the exchange, knight d4, isn't it? So what happens if knight d4 here? Because actually in the game knight d4 wasn't played. Instead the move rook e8 was played. Just holding e5. So that's the clue. Knight d4 that is not actually possible, surely, because of queen takes e5. Yeah, let's have a look. d5 actually shut down the protection of the e5 pawn from the rook. So knight d4 we have queen takes e5 check, just winning. Basically for white, he'll get out of the fork with big advantage, massive advantage. So yeah, the move d5 is a great move. Yeah, it cuts away that protection of e5. It shields d4 as well. So it's basically attacked e5 and shielded d4. Okay, so we see this move rook e8, but now surely black, surely here, is threatening knight d4, forking the queen and the rook. Okay, interesting. And what if, okay, this in this position, this is really interesting what white played. White's play here, what would you play in this position? Would you move away from this fork of the rook and queen? Would you do something else? Okay, the suggestion, bishop d3, interesting, some interesting suggestions. Yeah. Rook takes d5 was mentioned. Let's have a quick look at rook takes d5 as an exchange sack. Sorry, pardon me. After rook e8, sorry, it's white to move. It's white to move. Okay, knight f3 and rook c3 has been suggested. If knight f3 parrying knight d4, this might be okay for black actually after e4. This is looking quite dangerous for black after e4. Queen d2 tactical move. So if takes, there's taking and taking on g5, but black is not obliged to get into that after queen d2. Black might just play a move like e3, but I think he can get away with this. That should be okay for black as well, it seems. But yeah, knight f3 is not that great in the light of essentially e4. So in fact, white did this seemingly very dynamic aggressive move, knight e4, blockading the e pawn and allowing, it seems, knight d4, putting pressure on g5 as well, which means queen h5 is automatically more effective. But isn't this a small detail, fly in the ointment? Knight d4, it is actually played now. So what's the meaning of it? Well, the meaning of it is the pressure on g5. Something to do with that. What does white play here? White's play. I've given you a bit of a clue there. Yes. White's play. So his queen and rook are attacked. What does he play? Okay. He lets the rook go. Queen h5. He lets the rook go. Can White really do this? Black has some peculiarities in the position here. The rooks are not really naturally connected. The pawns seem dangerous. There's this f file which seems potentially dangerous. g5 is clearly weak and dropping off in exchange for the rook. But is that enough of an attack? Let's see. Now, Black is in a difficult position here, actually. If he is actually in a difficult position now. If he plays something like h6, then the rook's just going to move to an attacking square, threatening rook f7, and these rooks are just going to blast through on the f file. Moves on like this, just taking, and this would be the end of Black. Rook f1. This is just too dangerous. Any bishop f5, there's g4. End of Black. So yeah, he's kind of obliged now to take on c2. So there is this vacuum, which is literally this is a sacrifice which aims to exploit that vacuum of weaknesses that Black volunteered earlier. So knight takes g5 now, and the concrete threats here, there's a concrete threat of a mate in 2 now, with queen takes h7. And if here, then there's mate, and if here, then there's knight e4 mate. There's a threat of a mate in 2, which needs to be parried. So Black parries that mate in 2 with bishop f5, protecting h7. So how strong is White's attack in this particular position? There's only one pawn around the king. And to be honest, this really fascinatingly reminds me of a game from the British Chess Championship recently, which I didn't go over, and maybe we should check out if we have time, just to sort of contrast and compare. Black seems to have won material over here, but you know, these resources are kind of away from the king. This is like a positional king safety consideration. These resources kind of away from the king, and it seems that now there's a very, very powerful move, simple and powerful for White in this position, which basically puts essentially more pressure on h7. How can you put more pressure on h7 indirectly? White's play here, so test your attacking chess. How do you put more pressure? So you'll either gain 5,000 points here, or you'll lose 5,000 points. Let's put some stakes here. White to play. So think very carefully. White to play. You're the attacking player here. So you're going to either gain 5,000 points or lose 5,000 points in this position. Now I'm putting a lot of stake here, stakes. I'm putting high stakes because there seems to be something about this position which is going to compel many of you like flies to a light source, yeah, which may have been the one calculated by Fabiano Caruana as exactly what Levon Aronian would do in this position. There seems to be some other attacking ideas as well. Yes. Okay, so some of you have mentioned d6. There's also another idea, g4. Yes, you guys are quite resourceful on YouTube stream. d6 has been mentioned, g4 has been mentioned, and this more obvious looking queen f7 has been mentioned. Now this seems really dangerous to put the queen next to the king. Okay. But it turns out in this position, and this is crazy stuff, yeah, but black can actually, it seems, save himself if this is played after queen f7 check. Can you see how black can actually, it seems technically, save himself here? This is just the variation. How does black save himself? This is an amazing variation actually. Okay, not king h8, because then queen takes f5 and we've still got loads of pressure on h7, and this is really quite crushing. If queen e7 d6, this is murder. Yeah, this is absolute murder. This position, bishop f7, we've got now queen takes h7 threatened. Black would have to give up the queen. No, black has an amazing resource here in king h6, lending support for queen takes g5. You know, on queen takes f5, queen takes g5, then what has white got? Okay, he can take the knight, but black's the exchange up and it's surviving. So, but Levon's move is actually far more powerful than queen f7. But before I go on to it, you know, you guys mentioned d6 and g4. Let's have a look at d6 and g4 here. If d6, yes, that does support, it seems, very dangerous moves. But black might be able to play knight takes in this position. And off the check, still play this, not here, but here again, king h6. This is a real pain. And black apparently survives this, even if it's supporting knight. Black apparently is surviving this position. If the king, basically, if the king goes to h6 here again, it's like if the king is slaughter again. Queen takes f5, it's slaughter time. So d6 is not working because of this knight takes e1, and if queen there, then king h6. So the other attacking move you mentioned was g4, trying to get the bishop away from h7. Here just bishop g6 actually should be okay for black, and if knight e6, then we just take that because we're hitting the queen. Okay, so yeah, the move that was played, and this is really incredible then, not just to sacrifice the rook, but maybe to see this stuff, naughty stuff for black. The move which doesn't allow any naughty stuff is just rook f1 here, hitting the defender of the h7 pawn. And you might wonder, well, why can't bishop g6 be played? Well, if bishop g6, I think we've got something very naughty ourselves now in this position, where the black bishop is definitely trying to cling on to h7. What does white play here? White play here. Why this isn't possible? Yeah, rook f7. The bishop's overloaded, isn't it? And if takes, then actually we have a forced mate here. Queen takes. Here's a check. This is actually a forced mate. D6 check. Oops. So say here, queen takes his mate. This is crushing. We're just crushing black in this position. So actually, yeah, rook f7 is a real crushing move here. And if here, queen h6 threatening mate. Yeah, no, if ever takes, then we just mate in 2. So yeah, that's crushing. That's absolutely murderous. Rook f7 if bishop g6. So yeah, black can't play bishop g6. So he tries queen f6. And now actually here white has 3 different moves which are all pretty crushing actually. Because with queen f6, kind of weakness to the last move, black has left the rook hanging. This can be taken. That's actually a strong move in this position, simple and strong. Because, for example, like this, queen takes e5 check, rook f3, and this is really bad. If check, bishop f1. Yeah, this rook and knight, they're not helping the king. So even that is strong in this position. Now queen takes e8. But maybe even stronger. Maybe the strongest is rook takes f5 first. And if here, check, winning the queen is pretty strong. But also very, very strong is what was played. It's a very, very strong position now after queen f6. And you might wonder, was there any defense? Not really, not really. It's very difficult to defend this if there's no bishop g6, right? If anything else like queen d6, I think we can just take here or just take the rook. So okay, so queen f6 was tried, but Levon Aronian chose actually knight e6 check. Okay, now here, if the king goes back, remember this rook's hanging, so if the king goes back anywhere, we just take on e8 and it's actually a mate in 2. So this is, if rook takes e6, sorry, rook takes e6 was played. If bishop takes e6, we just take the queen and we've still got the rook after to munch. That's good enough. That's crushing. Okay, so the only move really is rook takes e6. And then we have rook takes f5. So the emphasis has switched now, it seems. What is going on in this position? Well, black played queen g6 here. And Levon's move is really strong. Levon Aronian has got 2 very strong moves here, funny enough. And it seems tempting to win the queen, right? This is actually a strong move, but perhaps for not the reasons we think of immediately taking the queen. Say the rook moves back here. So black has 2 rooks, a knight and the queen. If he loses the queen, it still seems quite a lot of material. This is actually quite good, it seems, for white as well, though. This position, there's a lot of attacking points like here. That wasn't played. In fact, what was played, you know, he denies himself the pleasure of winning the queen here with rook g5. He actually played instead d takes e6, just having the pleasure of this passed pawn instead. Now after queen takes h5, rook takes h5, e7 is the immediate, dangerous threat, because the king can't help against that pawn. We see in this position it's quite tricky. If the king steps back, then rook takes h7 is not helping at all. because white's having the check and it's crushing basically. And you might think, well, hold on, what about rook a8? This position is still really strong for white just after rook f5. Yeah, if white can get this rook f7 and e7 and stuff like that, then this is good enough as well. So black actually tried knight d4. So at the moment, the pawn situation, instead of winning the queen, white is just elected basically for a position where he's got 6 pawns against 5. He's only a pawn up, but this is a dangerous passed pawn. He must have calculated this very well. This dangerous passed pawn is enough. He doesn't need a massive advantage. Just this is enough. He plays e7, basically forcing rook a8, and he's getting 2 pawns. So at least he's got 2 pawns. He calculated this far as winning. Yes, it's 2 pawns, and he's threatening to queen. So another kind of forced move from black, rook e8. Rook e4, another forcing move here, but seemingly inviting black to win the pawn, win a pawn back with knight f5. But maybe this is all foreseen. Here another very strong forcing move, bishop e6. So if rook takes e7, we just have bishop takes f5 protecting the rook. So that's not possible. And if knight takes e7, then we just exploit the pin with bishop d7. So black tries to, accept 2 pawns down. It's a bit grim, but 2 pawns down with blockade, and he's attacking the rook. But here there's a cute little finish with bishop d7, again like a forcing move, basically forcing black. Knight takes e4, bishop takes e8. Can black try and get his pawn back with king f6? Well, the final move says he can't. Can you see the final move at move 39? White to play, winning, forcing resignation finally. Cute little final move. Yes. Cute little move. Cute little move. Bishop g6. I have to say recently, there are certain like mini subjects and skills in chess which you think you become proficient at, like pass pawns and stuff. But I think, managing pass pawns, your skill level goes up with your rating. There's just so many resources in particular positions to do with getting pass pawns dangerous and winning. This is a fantastic resource. Hitting the knight, threatening e8, just overloading black. That does the trick. Black has to resign here. So what did Levon, the genius of it is bypassing surely that the materialistic side of us might have indicated, why don't we just win the queen? But the engines are saying here, winning the queen is not too bad actually. Just play rook g5. Anything else is, you've either got rook g5 or d takes e6. So well calculated for d takes e6. But rook g5, it does keep more complexity in the position, it seems. But apparently, this is technically good for white. This sort of position as well, because it seems the queen has got this dangerous like queen g4 here, for example. These light square points are quite weak as well. This was another way of skinning the cat. Sorry, bad metaphor. This was another way of winning the game. I don't think many people skin cats. The RSPCA might have something to say about that. It's bad metaphor, bad expression. Sorry. Forget skinning the cat. There's another way of winning the game. Yeah, rook f8. But it requires maybe more calculation and stuff. You know, queen here. You know, maybe black can put up some resistance. You never know. The way it was played is just simplification. It's like a Capablanca type simplification, avoiding winning the queen, and instead just winning with the passed pawn. But it seems really forcing, though. This situation here is really forcing. D takes e6, queen takes h5, rook takes h5, because yeah, black is faced with e7, so it's very limited actual options for black. That simplification is clarity, great clarity to win this. So he tried knight d4 on rook a8. There's rook f5 here, rook e8, check, and this becomes dangerous as well now. It's only 2 squares away. Knight d4, e7. This is kind of crushing, because if something like rook here, threatening now, c7, black can't ever like play this because bishop b5. Yeah. So it seems, yeah, this whole position here is a goner. If another move, king h6, let's play rook f7. If e4, take. If we try this, rook d7, bishop's covering e2. So again, we've got e7 and we've got c7. What does black do? It's a pretty clear-cut way of winning the game instead of going for the queen. And this was after doing that rook sacrifice. So yeah, but you know, it's like yeah. So Caruana did apparently take some liberties with all those pawn moves, but it takes another GM to really exploit it dynamically with that fantastic rook sacrifice and very accurate play, taking into account all the amazing resources of both sides. So yeah, but visually we were right. Yeah, it looked a bit dodgy, black's position from earlier. We were right intuitively, but to be able to punish that sort of stuff, if you're not a super GM, is very hard. Okay, I hope you got something from today's game. I'm not sure about going on to other games because they're all pretty vastly complicated, these games. Maybe we should just pick another game next week. So I hope you got something from it, and have a good week, and see you next week. Okay, so thanks very much, and see you next week. Yeah, maybe we'll look at some more another Sinquefield game, or carry on with the Fischer Spassky next week match. Okay, thanks a lot.